Good evening. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. And I found this comment to be very interesting and really summed up suffering in a way that I obviously haven't summed it up. It's very succinct, it's very full, and it's so true. Here it is. This is from Lee Mack. Thank you, Lee. We come here for soul growth, meaning, I think he was mentioning, to this site. But I look at it as, in a broader sense, we come to this world. We come into this life for soul growth. The opportunity for soul growth elicits itself in the midst of pain and suffering. And we knew that coming in. And maybe he meant it in the broad sense of coming into our lives, coming into this earth, being born into this existence for soul growth. And that's the truth. That's it in a nutshell. And within that soul growth, though, here it is, the opportunity for soul growth elicits itself in the midst of pain and suffering. I think that is so beautiful. And also truth again. And this is for RT7 something, who had left a comment wanting to know, about her adaptation to suffering and her life altered and seeming to come out of nowhere, something that can change an entire life to what you never thought you'd be living or trying to live, having to live. And the sense that of no longer being productive or of having anything to offer to the temporal world, when in reality, it's the opposite. Suffering and pain opens up a vast supernatural reality plus a temporal and practical reality. And it's an opportunity for soul growth. It's elicited in the midst of pain and suffering, this opportunity. It's always that way. And we have Christ to look to as our chief example, leader, teacher, and one whose suffering and pain brought to all of us salvation, an opportunity for eternal life, union with God, divine union, through Christ's sacrifice, and how he suffered not only on the cross, but leading up to the cross. I would think even being born into this world, the Son of God, God coming to earth, it would be a lot of pain and suffering. Being in this temporal world, as opposed to where he was used to being as God, in heavenly realm, and of comprehending all, yet surrounded by us people who struggle to comprehend. Even this morning, my coughing was so bad. My throat was so raw. I couldn't stop coughing. I called the doctor's office and said, I was sorry I hadn't come in for the blood test all week, last week, but I would try maybe today, or I felt most likely tomorrow, the way I was coughing and my voice and my throat was raw. But I said, could explain that to the doctor. You go through an intake person, give the information. And I asked for a prescription cough medicine. I had in mind a cough syrup that would help heal my raw throat and help the coughing. In the morning, it's especially bad. And then in the evening, I go through a fit of it. But, so it's all gone into my lungs now. And so I also needed some groceries. Not desperately needed, but I've been eating apple and orange and grapefruit a lot. A mixture salad of that and pineapple. And was out of a couple of the items. So my neighbor kindly went to the grocery and went ahead and did her grocery shopping. And even went to Costco, so she brought another bag of oranges for me. And so kind and caring. And I was grateful, and I owed her some money. So she took care of that, got money out from my checking account. So very kind to do that. And then a family member called and asked if there was anything they needed to get for me. So I wasn't going to be able to get my medicine until tomorrow. My family member went out of their way and went to the pharmacist and brought the medication for me. Well, as suffering and pain would have it, they brought the medicine to me, this cough medicine, and I looked it up online. I do check to make sure something isn't going to conflict. Even though doctors, we trust them and all, but I've learned to research. Well, sure enough, I cannot take those. They were pills, not syrup anyway, but I cannot take it, not with my pain medicine I'm on. Bad results, if I do that. So I was briefly frustrated, but then it all hit me. And it was just before I read this comment from Lee Mack. And I realized I was jumping the gun. I was pushing for what I wanted to get well faster. In fact, this morning I even wondered, am I going to get over this? Or is this something I'm just going to have and then start a decline? Or, have something when I do get the blood test. And definitely I have to get the blood test in a month and see the hematologist-oncologist again. But chances are the blood cancer I would have would be what my dad had, which is a very slow-moving kind. If it pops into fruition, it's one of those things. This oncologist told me a year ago, they'll just check annually unless something happens that I need to be checked sooner. Because it's kind of thing that a blood cancer, it's sort of latent, in other words, just lurking like the devil, but not. The diseases that will cause our passing are a gift. No one's going to live forever. We all have to die of something. And cancer's as good a way as any way to leave the world. So, and when we get to a certain age and more bodily things happen, it can be a blessing. And they even say with people who get cancer that getting pneumonia is that person's blessing. It's the cancer patient's gift. Way out is pneumonia. Many cancer patients die of pneumonia. So, and it's a blessing rather than all of the suffering of cancer. So, but I realized with this medicine being what I can't even take, and the doctor knows that I'm on these medicines, but for God, I've only seen him twice since I became his patient a year ago, not quite a year ago. And, so he didn't remember and maybe didn't realize, probably doesn't have, well, he doesn't have any patients but me that has arachnoiditis who would need to be on this medication, pain medication. So he wouldn't realize that this cough medicine can't be taken. But I understood God was still saying, just relax. Enjoy this suffering and the unknown of it. Because it's been a weird one. How it 2 weeks ago when I was working on the head hole project, I thought I was getting better. And, and it's been I think the week before that, I had gone to help the family member with her project one day and thought, oh, I'm getting better. And then went into another phase. And then I relapsed big time after the head hole project at the pickleball facility. That was lots of fun, but temporary. And so here's this now. And then I thought I was getting better, and it drops into my throat and lungs. So it's got a life of its own. And it's like any suffering. It's like a major suffering. We can choose to embrace it and go with God's flow of it and look upon it as an opportunity, as Lee uses that word that I found just ideal for suffering, an opportunity. The opportunity for soul growth elicits itself in the midst of pain and suffering. And he adds, and we knew that coming in. I guess Lee could be a female too, but with the Mac, I'm thinking it's a guy. But doesn't matter, but I sort of like to imagine the viewers and their comments and who they are and things. Friends, they become friends, soul friends, and teachers to me. Everyone who leaves comments teaches me something, and I so appreciate it. But soul growth, the pain and suffering that is elicited in soul growth, it is an opportunity. So that totally changed my perspective, and I felt just fine about the medicine being pointless. I sort of fussed that it was including tax, $20 or something, or 18 something, I guess. And I'll call, but I don't think they'll take it back. I think that's like food products and refrigerated products. Groceries won't take those back because they don't know, what's happened to them. Were they left out in the air for a while and not refrigerated, so they can't resell them? And medicine, how do they know that I didn't open them and cough in the bottle? So, accidentally, no one would do that on purpose, or just open them up and probably germs in here. Although I've opened the windows, I've done all the with the sage and burn the sage. And I've put frankincense under my nose, frankincense oil. And today I got reishi mushroom capsules from Amazon. They arrived today. And one of the viewers mentioned that would help me build up immune system. So thank you for that suggestion. Well, I don't have much of an immune system built up, and my blood count, my white cells are very low. They were a year ago. I'm sure they haven't changed too much. And my blood platelets aren't producing enough red or something like that. But this doctor said he didn't know what it was, why it was that way, but not to be too concerned. Well, I'm not. Anyway, I'm a Christian. What's there to be concerned about? Other than I can just as easily as anyone else become impatient with suffering. This little bout, just not even 6 weeks. It'll be 6 weeks on Thursday. And, a normal person would be over this in 2 to 3 weeks. Although the family member came and she still had lingering cough from 4 weeks. And she's healthy and out around people a lot. And her friend, her good friend, he also was still had some of his something that he got that lasted a long time. So maybe things are lasting longer, and maybe we're weakening also. But there's and my arachnoiditis does it too. But here I was trying to encourage this young woman who is dealing with suffering in a major way. And yet my little temporary suffering had me impatient today. Didn't like that coughing this morning, and my throat's so sore, but it's not the end of the world. So I just wanted to share that comment. And the wisdom of it, I'll write it in my description. I just think it's, and I wrote back, of course, a long response. I write and write and write, like I talk and talk and talk. But hopefully it had some good stuff in my response, but I don't know. I hope to God some. But one thing that came to mind from the Holy Spirit is when we're faced with suffering, especially life-altering suffering, which will come to all of us at some point in time. Even if we die suddenly, we'll have an adjustment to make. We'll suddenly realize, like I did in my death experience, I'm dead. This is what death is. What's anyone ever afraid of? Then I took it closer to home. What was I ever afraid of? I had never thought I had been afraid of dying before I died. And everything is so true and real when you die that you know yourself in ways you didn't know before. You see yourself in total truth. And then you meet with God. And there's nothing but truth that passes between you and God. And that can be here on earth. So it's well for us to practice communicating with God. Prayer. Talk everything over with God. Verbal, mental, contemplation. And then if God chooses to take us into unitive prayer, rejoice in that. But in the meantime, the verbal, mental, and contemplation are prayer that we can at least create the circumstances for. based on what God gives us to do. Talk, mentally think, and contemplate. Everyone can contemplate. That's a fact. My Down syndrome friends, the late Wesley and late Tom, they contemplated God. They would during Mass or before Mass. It was beautiful to be sitting there with them, knowing they were contemplating God. I could tell by the glow in their faces and the peace that came over their faces as they were staring off in contemplation. So we can all do it, and but it's very important that when we suffer, we must learn to think with the heart. Intellectualizing suffering will never bring the opportunity for soul growth. You will not have the depth and breadth of soul growth if you remain in your head and intellectualize suffering and even try to theologize suffering. You can't, if you overthink it, you won't benefit and you won't understand suffering as the honor and valuable opportunity for soul growth. I know this because it was, 1995, when God, the Holy Spirit, told me, think with your heart, think with your heart, think with your heart. And I had been trying to think my way through suffering intellectually all those years since 84. So that was 11 years. Not quite 11 years. I had been trying to. The books I would read were deep books. I wasn't reading about suffering. I was reading philosophical, theological. When I did read Teresa of Avila, that was the closest I came to suffering, to reading anyone who wrote of suffering in a different way. But you see, she had an active life also. So I didn't feel like I related quite as much until I read Josefina Menendez's book, where her suffering was of the stigmata, but she was alone in this, only Spanish speaking, in a French convent, and away from her homeland, away from her mother and her two younger sisters, couldn't speak the language. Jesus and Mary came and would talk to her. She had not had experiences like that before. And she reported it to her, to the priest and to the Mother Superior in what little bits of words she could describe, as she kept trying to learn French. But she then was shuttered. She was kept in her cell and to do sewing, which was lovely for her to sew for children. But it was very difficult, very painful for her to be so alone. And, but she came to a point of thinking with her heart. And she died young. What was she, 23, no, 32 or 33, I think, crucifixion age of Jesus's crucifixion. So I think that's enough. Embrace pain and suffering. Think with your heart about it. Understand it as love. Pain and suffering and love. And that we know we came here for soul growth. And the opportunity for soul growth elicits itself in the midst of pain and suffering. And I will add love. Love intertwines the pain and the suffering. Remember what St. Michael told me. Love to suffer and suffer to love. Ponder that. That will help us adapt to what I call a primary life of suffering, a life of primary suffering, where that's our main vocation. And I don't find it wrong at all to identify as one who suffers, identifying with suffering. We're identifying with Christ. What's wrong with that? But to those who intellectualize suffering and put stake on, which is good too, I think it depends. If you don't have primary suffering and you're still out pretty much living a normal life, even though you may be on medication to keep you from having problems. But like my pain medication just keeps it at a tolerable level where I can think clearly. Without pain medication, I would be a wreck. And I know that from having lived 17 years of an erratic wreck of sobbing, and the pain would get terrible, overwhelming. So, and then it would ease, and then I didn't have proper medication to help me endure, because it's increasing pain. Arachnoiditis increases. But if you're someone who has some kind of a disability, but you can still function and work and out in the world and teach classes and travel and go out to lunch and sit and stand and etc., I think you wouldn't understand the beauty of suffering. I think it has to be someone who would be a primary suffering, that the life is totally altered, and to bring you to the point also where you stop thinking with the head so much and start thinking with the heart, and embrace Jesus very deeply with the heart, with love. God bless His real presence in us. And we'll talk more about suffering and getting through suffering as an opportunity, and of pain and suffering